Hi everybody, I am back again to tell you about another repository that I recently made, and it's called Fishgaman. Now, why does it exist? Let me tell you about that. So, my experience with internet has not been the best. My ISP has a very poor performance, and worse than all, it has data caps. Now, I used to have this weird experience with them where my data cap would run out pretty quickly, and like instead of keeping that plan for like 1 month, it would be like after a week that I had run out of that plan and I had to rebuy that plan. So I knew that there was something wrong, but the only way that I could actually check the status of my data cap was to go to the website, log in manually, and check my credentials and the amount of gigabytes left. But that's like a very boring process, especially when you want to do it multiple times a day. So I came up with this automation script, which what it does is that it does checking the status of my plan for me. What does that mean? Well, if you clone this repository, you will have a folder similar to this with like a multitude of files. Now, I'll go over these files and how they help me accomplish what I wanted to accomplish. And what I mean by that is I'll explain to you how this whole folder works from outside to inside. So let's go back to the GitHub repository webpage. As you can see in the language tabs, this project is made of 97% of Python. 97% of this project is made of Python, and the other 3% of shell scripts. Now, speaking of shell scripts, let's watch it. So the shell script here is fisher.sh. Now, if you open this file, we can see that all it does is that first of all, it changes directory to a git.fishgaman, which, according to this comment, you could replace it with the path that exists in your computer. So for example, if you download this repository to your home/user/downloads file or home/downloads folder, well, you gotta give it that exact path instead of whatever that's written here, which is user/git-fishgaman. Now, after changing directory to that, there's going to be a while true loop, which is an infinite loop, which means that it's going to run forever. Now, inside the loop, we have two lines of code. The first line is that it executes a Python script, and after that, it sleeps for 3,600 seconds. In other words, whenever I run the script, it will run this fish.py script every hour until I turn off the system. So that's how this script works. But what's that Python script? Well, there's a fish.py script, as you can see here, and there's a data-to-image.py, and there's a USPS.py. Let me show you this USPS first. This USPS is a Python file that contains a dictionary, and that's all it does. This dictionary, also called conf dictionary, as the name shows, it holds configurations for your specific computer/user credentials. As you can see here, the username, the user pass that are the credentials that you need to log in to the ISP website to get the status of your current plan are needed to be input here. You need to use your own and replace it with this input thingy, as I have also written it for you in the comments section down there. Yeah, right here. And after that, there's a Chrome driver path. So for this, I used Chrome driver, which uses Chrome to automate the task. Now, for this, you need to download the Chrome driver that's compatible with the current version of your Chrome browser. What do I mean by that? Well, you need to go to Chrome. Yeah, as you can see here, Chrome versions. Right now, what I'm seeing here is Chrome is version 89. Then you will go to Google and search for download Chrome driver. And after that, you go right here, and then as you can see, there's like an even newer version of Chrome, but I'm not using that. I'm using a version 89, so I'm going to click on Chrome driver version 89. And then here are different versions of it for different operating systems. We're going to use Linux 64 because, well, that's our environment. Now, let's get back to where we were. So, again, there are other things like this font path, there's this pre-wallpaper path, there's this edited wallpaper, and all these other things that we're going to talk about later, and they're going to be used in our script. So now that you know where to configure your own personal, individual, specific data and credentials, let's get back to the scripts. The main script is this one, fish.py, the one that's run by the shell script. As you can see, we're importing lots of libraries that we're going to need for our task. Now, if you go to the end of this script, well, that's how this script is run. What it does is that, first of all, it checks if this script is run directly. So if any function is imported from this file to another file, well, these are the functions that are not going to run. Basically, nothing is going to run. However, if we run this function directly, as we did in the shell script, well, these are the functions that are going to be run. First of all, there's going to be a get volume function that will return a string list. Given that string list to the text to image, there's going to be an image array, and after that, there's going to be that image array given to the image to background, which will finally give us an image file. Then finally, that image file is given to setWP, which means that's set wallpaper. Now, that was a long list of functions, but let's go through them one by one. First of all, there's this get volume function. The get volume function gets the volumes or slash data that's I'm allowed to use in my plan. So what it does is that it opens or launches an instance of Chrome driver, and given my credentials, it will log in automatically, and after that, it's going to use regex to extract my plan's data and return it as a string list. Now, after that, that string list is given to the text to image string function. So if I open data to image right here, as you can see here, this is a text to image function. Given the string list function, given the string list parameter slash argument, it creates a patch that will contain the text from the string list and add it onto that white patch. Then it will return that white patch. Now, why do we need this white patch? Let me tell you more about it. So after what we did in the first function and the second function, it will use that patch and give it to the image to background function. Now, what does image to background function do? Well, given in that patch, it will put the patch onto a default wallpaper that we chose previously in the configuration dictionary and return the path of that file. It will also save the default background patched with the white thingy and save it in the directory. Now that all that is done, given that path, the setWP function uses subprocess to run a command line command, which means that It's going to use GNOME settings, set org.gnome.desktop.background, picture UI, image file, which means that using this terminal command, it will set that image that we received as the desktop background. Now, why do we need to set it as desktop background? Now, let me show you. If you look at my desktop on the right hand side, you can see a white patch. Well, that's exactly it. And then you have text inside it, which are the string list. And if you look more closely, that's the current time in PST almost. There is data regarding how much data I have left, so 43 gigabytes of normal and then 91 gigabytes, which like sums up to like, I don't know, something around 130. And then there's an expiry date, which is in a different solar calendar. It's not actually after Christ's birth, it's a different calendar, but anyway, it shows you the expiry date. So as of right now, we're kind of getting the idea. It gets the data from the website, puts it onto a white patch, and then patches that white patch onto a given image that we chose, and then sets that image as the desktop background. Well, right now what we have is kind of a widgetoid. It's not completely a widget, but it's similar to it. In a way, it shows us the info, but if we click on it, nothing happens. So you could actually play with it and nothing will happen while it's showing you useful information. Now you could argue that it could be an actual widget which could do more, for example, renewing the plan, but let me tell you something. If you wanted to do that, it would be too much work, and it would be definitely not worth it, in my opinion. So now that we're done with this concept and how this works, let me give you some instructions on how to make it work for you. So let's first imagine that you're going to run this script manually. Even if you run it manually, it's still going to make the thing easier. You don't have to manually log in every single time. All you need to do is execute that shell script, and it will do everything for you and set it on the corner of your desktop. You don't have to manually do it 10 times a day. It will do it every single hour and put it right in the corner of your screen, so you have it every time you want it. In other words, it's there and you can access your plan status on demand. Now, speaking of how to set up this thing for yourself, well, it mostly comes down to this configuration file. I suggest that you make these permanent thingies. So for example, it's going to be 1234 something, and then same for the password. And then after you have downloaded the Chrome driver, just paste the location of that Chrome driver right here, and you're kind of done. So here you could change the font, but like I kind of like this font, and I actually got it from my Linux OS. I just searched for TTF files on my operating system and got it from there, because like internet is not the most trusted source of downloading files, and I was not sure if I was gonna download files from there. But if you're okay with that, well then download file, bring it to the directory that has this Fishgaman thingy, and replace the name of it with this. Same goes for the wallpaper, the default wallpaper. Now here I used the default Ubuntu 20.04 LTS focal. Now you could use your own, but I try to use the default one because I already liked it. If you want to change it, however, you can just change this name to whatever. Don't forget to paste it in this directory. Now you don't really need to change the edited wallpaper path, but well, you can. Now one more file that I need to tell you about is the log file. Now technically you don't really need to work with this file, but here we go. So why does this file matter? Let me show you. Now, first of all, let's go to this fish.py, and as you can see here, this file is mentioned 2 times in this script. The first one is that whenever it gets the volume, it will write that info to the log file. So you have a log of your, or slash a history of your plan status over time in that file. Also, whenever your main script runs into an error, it will print that error into the file. Let me show you if those things that I told you actually exist. Let's open netlog.log. Right here, as you can see, it's beautifully writing everything. This is date in UTC, which means that universal time zone. And then it shows the info all over every day. So as you can see right here, almost every hour it checked for it and then logged it here. And if an error happened, for example, here I had forgotten to import the soft process module. As you can see, it says name soft process is not defined, which means that it tells you actually where the script went wrong and what caused the error. There's this other error which is very confusing. I have not been able to solve it. As you can see, like in my fish.py, I've added many options that seem to be helping with this render error, but no cigar. So why does this log file matter? Well, first of all, as I told you, it helps you find the problem easier. For example, here I found myself sometimes that like script was not doing its job. Then what I found out was that I kept getting this error, and after quite a lot of research, well, I could have been able to solve it, but in this case, well, apparently it seems to be something wrong with the Chrome driver version 89, because previously when I was using Chrome driver version 87, I didn't face such problem. Regardless, this is a random error, but regardless, it shows you what's wrong. And sometimes, if for example, for whatever reason, the actual website starts, the ISP website, starts changing, well, if it shows you an error, that like, for example, it couldn't find the regex pattern that you asked for, and if you see that like your script is not working for a couple of hours, you can go to the log file, find out the issue, solve it by yourself since this is open source, or actually ask me. Now, as you can see, there's another example of how this went wrong. I was trying to make this script path to working directory neutral, which means that no matter where you run it, this script will run and will have access to all of its assets. And what I made a mistake was that I pasted slash before the name of the default wallpaper. So what it was happening was that it was trying to search for this in the root directory, and obviously there's no ubuntu-rgb-sm.png directory in the root directory, so it's gonna say no such file or directory. This is really helpful without throwing many errors at your face. Alright, now that we have told you all about that, there's a couple more things. First of all, what if you wanted to run this script whenever you turn on your computer and you log in to the graphical user interface? Well, there's a way you can do that. In order to do that, you need to use the .profile file, which is a text file that contains shell script. That shell script can be interpreted by many different scripts. It's not just bash. However, for our purpose, it doesn't really make any difference since we're going to be using a simple command. Now let's check out what this thing actually is. Now right here I am in my /home/user directory. Now if I go and say cat.profile, we can see that yeah, it's actually a shell script, and in the end there's these 2 lines. Now I added 2 lines. The second line, or let's say the last line, is the battery charge shell script. This shell script is actually explained more thoroughly in another video on this channel that you can look at, but that's not our discussion right now. Our discussion right now is about this first line that I'm highlighting over here. So what it does is that it runs this script. But how does that make any sense? Well, let me tell you. If you use GNOME Display Manager, whenever you're trying to log in to your graphical user interface, it will source/execute a file called .profile for the user that's going to sign in. So right here we're in the .profile file for our user. What does that mean? Well, it means that whenever we try to log in, it will actually execute this whole thingy, and as a result these 2 things will be executed on startup, and since both of these are infinite loops, they will run forever from the time you turn on the computer till the time you turn it off. With all that said, you need to hear this word of caution, and that is there's a risk if you're a power user. If you're a power user and you login shells a lot, you need to know that whenever a login shell is launched, this .profile file is actually executed again. So if you log into your GUI and then go to TTY 5 or whatever, then these processes are going to be created again, which means that there's going to be redundant processes, and you don't want that. As of right now, I don't have a solution for this. It might be added in the future, but for now, if you ever do use login shells a lot, you're going to have to manually fix this issue or kill the processes. There goes that. Now let me see if there's anything else left before we wrap this up. And this thing that you need to manually add is very important also. Let me tell you about this so you don't forget about it. Right here I'm using this address, but you have to be using a different address. And what do I mean by that? Well, I'm using my username, but you don't have to. So if our project is located on the downloads folder, well, you're gonna have to write the addresses like this: at /home/download/Fishgaman, the /fisher.sh, and then put that and symbol in the end so that it runs in parallel, so that your second line does not have to wait for the first script to take its time and finish. After all that's done, well, let me run this test for you once to see actually if it works at all. While you were gone, I changed the USBs file to have my credentials and the path to my Chrome driver already inserted, which means that right now I can easily run this code. Now, in the commit that I just did, I made this code PWD neutral, which means that this doesn't mean anything, and it's not important where you run it. It will always know where to go, if you of course fix that sh file that I showed you and give it the correct address. That's the only one thing that you need to set, apart from username, password, and the Chrome driver path. So, since this is path to working directory agnostic, I could just run this code here right from home. I mean, it's not actually home, it's home directory. And it's going to run it. So I'm going to say git slash Fishgaman right here, and then run that Fisher shell script. And click enter. And it will use my credentials from that dictionary to do the thing. As you can see, it started clicking, which means that it had already entered the credentials and clicked the button. After that, it's going to say done logging in. Wow, that was quick. Which means that it has already logged in. Then it's going to print my info right over here, and after that it's going to change the desktop background. And as you can see, for a second my background went black, which means that I actually changed the desktop background. As you can see, it's writing the time as 8:50 March 29th, and as you can see right here, it's March 29th 8:50, which means it already did it right now. There's one more thing that I need to do, and that is to hit Control-C. The reason is that, as I told you, this Fisher.sh script is an infinite loop. It will run forever unless you manually kill it or turn off your computer. It doesn't mean it's dangerous, it just means that it's going to run. It doesn't use much power anyway, and you could actually change it to run like, I don't know, every 10 minutes, but I don't want to be DDoSing my ISP and having worse troubles with them. So that's why I do it like this. Now that all that is done and clear, let me tell you one more thing. Now, while I improved this project by a lot, there's still a lot that needs to be addressed. And let me give you an example. Well, we have two functions that are like kind of tricky to get it to work, and these are text to image and image to background. As you can see, I've chosen these like height and width amounts for it right here, and then these coordinates for the text to start, and all that means like where on the patch the text should be inserted, and finally right here I tell it where on the final image the patch should exist. There's a caveat to that, and that is you can't use every single image. Now what you should do to make it to work is to convert that image to RGB using Pillow. Now that's not hard, but technically every image is supposed to be RGB unless it's RGBA, but to my surprise the Ubuntu default desktop background is actually, I think there's this different coding named P or something like that, which means that that encoding could only support 256 colors, not 16 million, 256. That's really weird and really exciting at the same time. So I had to convert it to RGB. As you can see, it's created in RGB. It has 3 channels right now, and it works. But you have to like change the location of this thing. So imagine if you used a full HD 1920 by 1080 image. Now what this script in this part, in the image to background, the part that I'm highlighting, the part it is doing is it's going to patch it on this point. But because right now my display's image is 768p, and I changed the image resolution of the default Ubuntu background to 768p, this is positioned right here. Now if that image gets higher resolution like 4K, this part will get so small that you can't even see the text, and moreover its location will severely change. So let me give you an example, as I told you back again with the full HD image. So if you use a full HD image and we do that on 50 to 200, well, it's going to be in the first fifth of the height of the image, which is going to be ridiculous. Like, it's going to be much higher than this and smaller also. And then instead of being at the end of the width of the display, which is 1040 to 1340, which is very close to the border, which is 1367. Yep. Now, if you have a full HD image, it's gonna be around the middle because that has 2000 pixels in width. Yep. Not the biggest experience. Now, I have a solution for you. You could change this code, give it a pull request. I'll thank you. Or you could do an easier job, and that is you make an image, use that image and that you have, convert it to RGB, and then resize it to 1367 to, well, 768, which is the exact size that used by this code. And then you could leave this alone and it will appear somewhere around here on the right hand side top corner of your desktop. You could also change the location, you could play with that, but yeah, that's all there is to it right now. So be careful about these two. First of all, beware of making redundant processes with logging shells. And another thing is that be careful. Different resolutions or images with different encodings are going to make it problematic for you. Now, in the video description of this video, I'll show you a tutorial, a link to a tutorial that tells you how to convert it to RGB or RGBA. And it's pretty simple. It's like two methods, one after another, after you have created and made the image. I mean, I could already do that right here, you know. Let's do it. So here we have the image object using the pillow directory. Now, I'm not going to actually commit it right inside the code. I'm going to show you right here. So imagine we have an image object called image.open image.png. Now we have this image object. Now what we could do is then set convert and then why failing to write, anyway, it's going to be capital letters RGB, and then you're going to do a resize of like 1367 by 768 pixels, which or it's a tuple, so don't forget that there should be two parentheses. So this will get the image, convert it to RGB, and then resize it. One thing you need to be notified though is that even screenshots in Ubuntu needs to be converted to RGB because they are encoded as RGBA. We're not going to get into that. You could search for it on the internet, but yeah, that's a different thingy. And before I go, actually, let me tell you one last thing, and that is the borders slash sizes slash indexes of these images are reversed in Pillow versus NumPy. So in NumPy, the first index is like its height, and the second one is its width. The third is actually like the channel, which doesn't really matter. Here, it's vice versa. It's first the width and then the height, which makes it a 16:9 aspect ratio. Now you could remove this. You should put one working. Alright. Now that's for it. I just understood that I had this shift R, which stands for capital R, as my simple screen recorder hotkey, so that's why it was not working. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this. Hope you found it helpful. Feel free to contribute to this open source project or not. If you have any issues, let me know. And until then, have a good day.